Look at this camera. It's on face recognition. What does it see in the background that it thinks is a face? So I gotta do this like an idiot. And then surely it'll automatically, there, freaking super expensive garbage. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's Scyushi, the guy who's too late to the punch. Boy, I'm sure punctual with this video, huh? Believe it or not, I still get this question quite regularly within my small circle, which is, why did I stop playing Path of Exile 2, and will I ever go back to it? So to answer the second question, yes, I will go back to it. But to answer the first question, I'll go back to the game when it stops sucking ass. This is gonna be a bit of a ranty video, so buckle yourselves in, but frankly speaking, a lot of this I've already discussed at length in my more feature-length videos talking about the inventory system, talking about the Necromancer. There's just a lot of issues that I have with Path of Exile 2's design. And unfortunately, I don't see a future where the game is going to be pushed in the direction that I want. So the main reason I started playing Path of Exile 2 in the first place is because I was expecting a sequel, something that ends up expanding upon the mechanics of the previous entry. But unfortunately, as we've seen time and time again, the developers are kind of taking the laziest approach possible by copy and pasting old, outdated content and mechanics from Path of Exile 1 into Path of Exile 2, essentially just bringing the game into a new game engine. Now, Path of Exile 2 originally was going to be a simple expansion of Path of Exile 1, so a lot of that makes sense under that premise. But this being a full-on sequel has me questioning the developer's choices. While I'm probably going to title this something along the lines of why I quit playing Path of Exile 2, you can generally consider this to be like my re-review of the game now that some time has passed and I've got like 400 hours in it. Obviously, they did something right, at least initially. The first time playing through the acts was just stupendous. But if I start to strip away the various mechanics that the game just rips off from Diablo 2, because these devs have no ideas that they can call their own, at the end of the day, what does Path of Exile 2 bring to the Diablo-like genre? Being able to cast and move at the same time. I'm not kidding, that's basically the only thing that this game does differently, and it's such a monumentously simple yet effective mechanic that it is why I play this game over other Diablo-likes. I'm not kidding, after I ended up slowing down with Path of Exile 2, I actually reinstalled Diablo 4 just to see whether or not it was as bad as I remember. And while going through the main campaign in Diablo 4 was great for the time, I felt completely gaslit when I started casting spells and I had to stand in place while waiting for that animation to play out. Path of Exile 2, allowing you to cast while moving, revolutionizes the gameplay of this genre. But as I stated in my early access review of Path of Exile 2, I think that the developers don't realize what they've got. Now, one of the big differences between me and pretty much everybody else that plays Path of Exile is I actually hated Path of Exile 1. I was really surprised to see how refreshing Path of Exile 2 was, not only just for the genre, but also just the amount of improvements that they made over the base game in terms of the combat and complexity. There's definitely praise worth giving for the development of this game. But problems started to set in almost immediately with the first few major patches, because the developers continually started to regurgitate old content from Path of Exile 1 that had no place or right in Path of Exile 2's systems. A much more egregious but controversial topic would be how pay to win the game is. It's not actually pay to win because pay to win means that you pay for power and you skip content. If you get to the end of Path of Exile and you're still using the bunk-ass default stash tabs, then all the power to you. Here's my hat. You can now say, it's not pay to win. Like, I'm gonna call a blue ostrich an ostrich. The fact is, you have to buy these stash tabs if you want to be able to play this video game. And the main reason for that is because the inventory is god-awful. I've gone into that in detail in its own dedicated video. The only point that I'm getting at with today's video is how much they keep on bringing stash tabs from Path of Exile 1 without improving anything on them. The map tab, you can literally spend money to make map storage worse. Clean it up. Clean it up. That's not what today's discussion is about. I just get so heated and so frustrated at the asinine decisions these developers continue to make. At its core, why did I stop playing this game? Because the last season sucked. It's so goddamn long and drawn out and so boring. Imagine, if you will, that the developers actually make a game that has a combat system inspired by Dark Souls. That's right, a top-down Souls-like game, if you will. But then you copy and paste the monster behaviors from Path of Exile 1 where they just swarm over you like the plague and there's nothing you can do, you just die instantly. This was always a problem with the game, let's be real, but the fact is the most recent season put that fault front and center. I know, they've changed it since then. They've made it slightly better. But the problem is that the developers keep on just changing numeric values because it's a lot easier to do something like that rather than develop new content and new ideas. And that's kind of my biggest discouragement towards Path of Exile lately, is I feel like my alignment and the developers' alignment aren't really going to meet up anywhere. I was completely addicted and absolutely enthralled at the initial concept idea that Path of Exile 2 was when it launched into early access. But since then, it's been bad update after bad update. Or rather, let's spin that word of phrase. It's not bad update, it's that they have been regressing the game back into the same issues that I have with Path of Exile 1. My argument is that if they're gonna just make the same game again, then I'm getting on a lifeboat and getting the hell out of here. Path of Exile 1 fans, on the other hand, which is their primary audience, not this random guy, will probably love that decision. The thing is, Path of Exile 2 in my eyes could have been so much more than a Diablo clone. If they started to bridge the gap between isometric top-down RPG or Diablo-like and mix that with Dark Souls or Souls-like, they could have been spearheading the market of the Diablo Souls-like. Because we don't have games like that. The closest we come to it is No Rest for the Wicked, but that's widely a single-player game. Great as it is also extremely flawed because of design decisions. And so we circle back to the age-old question, will I return to Path of Exile 2? Honestly, if the developers keep pushing the game in the direction that they have been, probably not. I'm by no means trying to say that Path of Exile 1 is bad or that 2 is bad, it's just not really for me. I like the slower, more meaningful, methodical combat of a Souls-like game. And I'll never forget my first-hand experiences of going through the acts for the first time, and especially fighting the act bosses. From the amazing televised attacks to the music syncing up with the battle, it is something truly special. But as we slowly push into Act 3, it starts dragging on. And that was so much more obvious to me when the new season came out and they expected me to grind through the game again. I personally think that through this testing phase, they should just allow us to skip progression. Lastly, and I know you Necromancer mains are going to be curious about my thoughts towards the, what are they called? The Soulstone summon things? The other minions. Specters? I think that's what they were called, right? Honestly, I hate it. I think it was the most stupid implementation of the idea of resurrecting creatures and using them as summons as I've ever seen, which is right on par with the fact that Path of Exile 2 has the worst Necromancer in the genre. Again, I have another video going into more detail about that. For those of you that aren't Necro mains, you basically get a Pokeball, as in a skill gem, and for every enemy corpse that's on the ground, you can suck them up into that Pokeball. From that point on, that Pokeball is now dedicated to that specific minion and can be socketed into any of your gem slots. But if you want to end up getting another creature in your Pokeball, you have to basically just create a new one. And with the severe amount of issues this game already has with inventory management, you can imagine my problem when suddenly my whole inventory is filled up with different Pokeballs. It doesn't show you a picture of the minion or anything, it just tells you in text. So I hope you got the in-game codex open that says the names of all the creatures. Oh wait, there's no such thing. The thing is, I have this issue where I usually will end up playing games that I love to the point of exhaustion. Usually at that point, I'll stop playing the game and can still look back on it and reflect positively. But then there's games like Path of Exile 2 or Space Marine 2 or Genshin Impact, where I put so many hours into it that I started to see the flaws. Or more so than that, it's the lack of potential that's been realized in any of those projects. Path of Exile 2 feels like an overglorified expansion of PoE 1. Space Marine 2 severely has problems, but instead of fixing any of them, the developers are now working on Space Marine 3 instead. And Genshin Impact just f***ing sucks. It never evolved. They copied every idea in the handbook that is Zelda Breath of the Wild, but when it came to actually creating unique, identifiable experiences themselves that weren't reliant on stealing aspects from other games, they couldn't do it. Anyways, Excuse my ramblings. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I know it's a bit late. I'm hoping that one day Path of Exile 2's true potential can be realized, but unfortunately, I just don't think that the developers can see what they have here. As much as I know I'm going to end up getting a lot of slack on this video for talking negatively about this game, generally speaking, I've shared this opinion with some of my friends that really love Path of Exile, and they share the same sentiment. There's a reason why so much of the Path of Exile 2 community has bounced back to playing PoE 1. But despite my frustration, I do genuinely want to reserve my judgments because PoE 2 hasn't released yet. And unfortunately, based on how slow development time has been, it doesn't look like this game is coming out of early access this year at all, dude. If they end up adding a new class that I'm interested in, or a bunch of the new acts, then maybe I'll end up going back to it. But if I can be perfectly honest, the amount of fun that I was having while playing PoE 2 just wasn't there anymore. I'm not the biggest fan of starting again when it comes to video games. So I don't know if I would even jive well with the seasonal content that they have planned for Path of Exile 2. But in my opinion, the developers just need to face facts and start deciding which lane they want to be in. Are they going for the slower, more methodical Dark Souls combat, or are they just going to be fast-paced action game? As far as this genre is concerned, I think that Last Epoch is kind of the best of all worlds. Because Last Epoch doesn't need a PhD like Path of Exile 2, but it doesn't insult your intelligence like Diablo 4. And frankly speaking, if they could somehow figure out a way to make it so that you can move while casting, I would go back to Last Epoch in a heartbeat and completely drop PoE 2. At least until the game sees its 1.0 release, in which case I can't promise that I'll get as addicted to it as I did with that initial early access launch.